Alright, welcome back to Destruction Delivered. It is turn 10, and we have captured the world of Einstein. Total of 6 fleets, over 100 firepower, converged on Einstein, and over 4 rounds beat it down. Now, this is a fairly tanky force. War mechs are slightly better at hit generation than they are at tanking. Theros all-purpose saucers actually also put out a fair few hits. So we did take a fair amount of damage, but all in our chaff, fortunately. So we did lose an X-8 assault shuttle, one of our TK tanks there, a whole bunch of Sentinels, A202 scouts, and X5 raiders. Overall, we lost about 22 X5s. We did lose our Hurax stealth fighter. We lost a few of our super space fighters, almost all of our Sentinels, and the majority of our A202s, but we took the planet without too much trouble. Now, we are launching on Soy Boy. In total, 2 turns from now, we have a little over 180 firepower, 190 firepower hitting Soy Boy at the moment. That's more firepower than Paladin has in his entire nation, I believe. I don't think he can possibly stop me. However, just to be sure, we're also pumping out 24 X7 Corvettes, which have speed 80 here. I think I accidentally earlier said they had speed 70 and talked about that. That's not correct. They have speed 80. Fortunately, Einstein is exactly speed 80 units away from Soy Boy, so those 24 X7 Corvettes will contribute another 19 or 20 firepower to the attack. On Abrawari, we are launching our largest and most powerful fleet yet, the Proud Banner, 123 firepower. War mechs, Zenran War Monks for chaff, Sentinels of Gorsasso. Also, we have some heavy chaff, Boron Recon Buggies and V2s, 2 Gigantoplanet Attackers, and some A7 Maulers for hit generation. Over here, we've got Mammoth Terror. Mammoth Terror, unfortunately, cannot reach Soy Boy in 2 turns, but it can reach in 3. Or we could hit Mira in 2 turns. Now, Mira is, of course, going to have 5 firepower of X5 Raiders bounce off it this coming turn. That's sad. Not much we can really do about it. So I think what we're going to do is we're just going to hop Mammoth Terror over onto Abrawari to pick up a whole bunch of War mechs to reinforce them. And then from there, we'll also either hit Mira or we'll spend 2 turns flying over to Flinch to take that away from Paladin. However, we should be able to take Flinch away from Paladin with forces from Soy Boy as well as Serendipity. Kadesh, nobody cares about. Gahun is still very much worth taking if we can get it, but it has about 80 firepower on it, so that is something of a question. We do have some cargo boosters coming back towards Bia in order to pick up TK tanks. Mimir has a lot of Ultranium on it and decent population, so we're going to swap them over towards producing capital units fairly soon. And just have them feed chaff in from other worlds instead of producing it themselves. Arion, meanwhile, is up to 1,400 population. They only have 830 Ultranium, and we're starting to build CR orgs there. So self-propelled, high effectiveness, high speed capital units at Arion. Won't get one this turn, unfortunately, but we will complete that and lock in the price next turn on these 5, and I don't think the price will go up. It's kind of hard to say. Just in case, I'm actually going to just start on the lock this turn, because I don't quite have enough to buy one entire. Moving in, centralizing more stuff from Kandra. Kabna, we're actually hopping to Abrawari with this TK tank. Abrawari will have some more War mechs, I think, on it. And so we'll be able to grab some War mechs to go with these TK tanks. And in Mimir, of course, we're assembling yet another fleet. This fleet here, Gigantoplanet Attackers, will pick up these 8 Boron Recon Buggies and 32 more Zenran War Monks, and then carry on from there. Piranha's still building Psy Haulers. Our lock will be over fairly soon. We're getting them at a significant discount compared to the price they are right now, which is great, because Psy Haulers are really valuable. And back here, we're still just chewing on this very slow lock of X5 Raiders, while we take all the stuff off this planet and ship it to Arion. Over here, we've got 3 TK tanks coming out, deploying to Arion, carrying them. We are probably going to need to shift away from the concentrating ground chaff model as we start building CR orgs. But what we'll start doing is we'll start sending these Psy Haulers to Arion to pick up that chaff and take it forward. Psy Haulers are also, of course, extremely useful for logistics behind the lines, because they have a lot of carrying capacity and a lot of speed. So, for example, a Psyhauler can bounce back and forth between Mimer and any of these worlds, or even Mira or Relay, carrying 175 units per turn, since it takes 2 turns to bounce out and back, out and back. So effectively 175 units per turn. That's the same efficiency as a very large fleet of cargo boosters. For example, a fleet of cargo boosters would take 4 turns to make this round trip. So to carry the effectively 175 resources per trip, per turn, you would have to have 6 or 7 cargo boosters to match that. So Psyhaulers can be worthwhile, but probably not at a price that high. In general news, in terms of player rankings, we're no longer on top. Travail has surpassed me in terms of world count and population and net worth. The worlds that he took this turn, he captured a world from Star Charger, he captured a world from Xenofruit, and he captured 2 worlds from Xenofruit and defended 1. So from Star Charger, I'm not sure what was happening here. I'm not sure why that's carrying all that Ultranium, but he's taken Ja'alan. So it looks like Star Charger's probably at war with him, which is great news for me. Probably means I will just go ahead and snake Mira, lay claim to this whole sector down here. On top of that, of course, as I said, he's fighting Xenofruit and doing a really good job of it. So if we list his battles again, he defended this world from 40x6 Instigators. This looks like just kind of a probing attack, and he had a whole fleet here on Nioyoi. You really don't want to lose battles to Solborgs because it feeds them more Ultranium, which is, of course, the limiting resource later on in the game. And then he also captured Altania with a little fighter attack force. And he captured Prendergast. Yeah, he took a lot of damage taking Prendergast, but that's okay. He lost 24 firepower compared to 25 firepower defending. Yeah, he took a lot of damage doing that. Okay, well, still probably worth it. I know that flash is terrible, and I apologize, but this is the easiest way to get back. And then, of course, he captured Nioyoi this turn as well, which is why Xenofruit was hitting it with such a relatively light force. So, yeah, Travail has launched a very significant incursion into Xenofruit's sector. I mean, he's 340 units away from his capital in that direction. For reference, well, I guess I'm probably also close to that away from my capital. No, I'm 252 away from my capital. I'm attacking a direct neighbor. Travail is attacking a relatively distant neighbor. Not sure how Xenofruit is planning to stop him. He does have a couple CR Org 2 V3s, but V3s honestly are fairly inefficient, especially for this early in the game. I think V3s and V4s are just inefficient to be building because you're still limited by population. Later on, turn 20, even turn 15 or 16, through 20, at that point these units start to become really useful because you're crunched on Ultranium and your population is relatively non-limiting for you. But, I mean, it doesn't get more efficient to build units like this until you get up to the V4s. And, prior to that, I would just stick with the lower tier units. Xenofruit does not seem to be defending himself super, super effectively. But I don't know where most of his firepower is, because he's got 80 there, that's 90, 120, he's got about 140 firepower visible. So he's got 50 or 60, about 60 firepower floating around somewhere. And I don't know where that would be. He's lost all of his battles for the last turn, and he lost 2 out of his 3 battles last turn. Because Koneko hit him, and that was a big blow. That was a very significant fleet that was crushed there. Yeah, oof. That was painful. And then he also lost Gorgos last turn. Okay, so that was the turn when this fleet landed in his territory. And in fact, that fleet is still sitting here on Gorgos. Travail has his first Megabot V3 out already, so bully for him. Yeah, so Travail is definitely aiming most of his firepower in that direction. In terms of total firepower, he's got 372, which is quite high. I have 405, so I have a little bit more, but even so. Overall, I think we're doing quite well. We need to... These cargo boosters need to go somewhere. Where needs cargo boosters? Send them back to Piranus, because I think Piranus, after we complete this lock of Psy Haulers, I think Piranus is probably just going to become a feeder world. Well, no, because we're concentrating stuff from Bethira on Piranus as well, so I'm not sure what I'll start producing after the Psy Haulers are done. Possibly we'll go back to Hurak Stealth Fighters, because Hurak Stealth Fighters, I can churn out 2 per turn at this point, or, 3 or 4 once I get a little bit more population in. They're relatively cheap compared to their complexity, and they're fast, so I can use them as very fast chaff. The other option is to buy a license for something. I could potentially... What I could do is if I can gather, about 1,000 or so Ultranium on Piranus, I could buy the license for the Megabot, the base one, and start building them there, and then transport them over to Arion, and have Arion build the upgrades for them. That can be a method to save time. Now, one unit, well, it wouldn't actually save time because of the transit time involved. One unit can only be upgraded once in a single turn, so even if you have, say, the Hyper Booster and the Arc Cannon both on the world, it still has to upgrade to a V2 and then to a V3, which obviously takes time. But you can upgrade something to a V2 the same turn you build it. So the most efficient way to do this actually is to have a world that's dedicated to building Megabots V2, ship them to another world that's just building Arc Cannons, which means they're not spending hardly any money. And then as soon as they get there, you put them in the base fleet and they join up with the Arc Cannon, become a V3, and then are sent on their way. Other things I could start doing, I could start building N-class battleships, but there's really no reason for me to do that when I'm an Intradishar, because Gigantoplanet attackers are better and they cost less complexity and very similar in terms of Ultranium. Like, I mean, the GPA is even better than the N-class V2. It has more carrying capacity, it's only slightly slower, and has higher defense and the same damage. And that's a total of 1,100 complexity, plus the cost. So if I desperately need to, conserve on money, might be worthwhile. But I think the Ultranium difference is going to be covered by the license difference, the license cost, for a long time. So not worth buying the license. If I happen to take a Vatak homeworld or something, I might start building them just because, could be useful. But Soy Boy here will fall very, very shortly. He can see both of these fleets because he does have an EDM sensor 200. So Paladin can see Doom coming for him. But I don't think he may not appreciate the scale of it. Well, actually, no, he can't because they haven't launched yet. So he won't see them till next turn. That's right. I'm more clever than I think I am. And then actually yeah, can't make it in one turn, unfortunately. Sad. That is indeed sad. But yeah, I think my 180 firepower will win this fight. Like, what he's got right now is about 140. He may be able to build 40 more firepower in the interim, but he would have to concentrate everything he's got immediately. And I don't think he's going to do that. For one thing, because he once again, I believe, didn't make any moves this turn. Like, he made 2 moves on turn 8, and then he did log in today, so he may be making moves, but I don't know if he's going to. I don't know if he'll anticipate the homeworld strike or not. We'll see. It'll be a very climactic battle in any case, but I think my capital units will carry me. My fleet composition, I think, will do the job for me. Because what he's got is he's got these Boron Recon Buggies, which are very, very chaffy and do not generate many hits. He's got War Mechs, which generate some hits. Like every 7 or every 8 War Mechs on average generates a hit. So this whole pile is generating about 9 hits per round, which means they're significantly less good at hit generation than a GPA is. His heavy cruisers generate comparable levels of damage to my Gigantoplanet attackers, but he's only got 1 heavy, and then he's got 2 mediums, and the mediums generate a lot less damage. So overall, my hit generation is a lot better than his, because I have 4 Gigantoplanet attackers, and those 4 Gigantoplanet attackers drop about 16 hits per round each. So just those 4 units are laying down, 64 attacks, 64 hits every round. And then, of course, there's whatever comes from the rest of my chaff and secondary units, my A7 Maulers, etc., etc. So I'm looking at, like, probably upwards of 80 or 90 hits from my fleets. His fleet is not going to generate 90 hits, I don't believe. His Hugh 9s will give me about a hit and a half. Boron Recon Buggies generate about 6. So we're looking at about, right now, 7 or 8. On average, 1, maybe 2. So call it 10. About 8 from the Warmex. About 8, so 18. And then this guy does 7 out of 10. He gets 20 attacks, so he gets 14 hits a round. You see what I'm saying? The hit generation is fairly lopsided in my direction. So the only way for him to stop this is if this turn and next turn, he churns out a whole bunch of cheap units that generate a lot of hits. So basically, Hugh 9 Eliminators. If he pumps out a ton of Hugh 9 Eliminators, he might be able to match me in terms of firepower by the time I land, and he may be able to at least cripple my fleets. But even crippling that fleet, he's trading his entire Empire's firepower for less than half of mine. And I can have backup fleets coming in for Soy Boy to hit land in 3 turns. So, for example, Abrawari, we're moving over there, 2 turns from there to Soy Boy. This Psy Hauler is landing here and will pick up 17 TK tanks and make for Soy Boy in 2 turns. I don't think he's going to be able to stop me. He may, if he gets really lucky, he might stop the initial hit here, but he won't be able to. He won't then have the resources to stop the follow-up hit unless he got extremely, incredibly lucky. Oh, and of course, we have to count on these X7 Corvettes, 24 of them, generating another 10 hits or so. Yeah, it's pretty one-sided. So, should be able to take that in this coming turn. And then, from there, I keep pulling away from this screen before I'm actually done with it. From there, we can grab Serendipity and Flinch pretty easily, assuming he's pulled his stuff back to defend. If not, we'll still be able to grab it easily because we'll have a whole bunch of leftover firepower here, like well over 100. And then I think we'll try to take Gahoon and strip its Ultranium and just take everything off this planet and put it on Soy Boy. So we'll end up with like 1,600 population and ideally well over 1,000 Ultranium, which will help a lot. And then Serendipity and Flinch obviously will also strip. And we'll turn this into a production center for Zeron heavy cruisers and similar units. I'd really like the XMC price to come down, but I doubt it will, just because XMC price often doesn't drop. They're really useful units and everybody knows it. A7 Mauler price is still low. Recon Buggy price is pretty high. CR Org price, of course, is minimized, which is why I'm building them now. CR Org 2 price has vacillated, but it stayed about base level. And what else has gone up or down? GPAs are starting to go down again, which is good. So I may get another lock or 2 of them. Harak Stealth Fighters are once again at about base price, but hopefully that will start coming down. Ideally. Megabots are pretty low. What happened here was everybody placed their locks this turn when it was at minimum price, and so they're going back up again, which is fine. People love Megabots. N-Class Battleship coming down. Nozama Fighters going up, actually. Super Space Fighters peaked at 38, which is crazy expensive, and have started to come down again after that. TK Bikes are at minimum price, so building some TK Bikes in my rear areas may be a good shout. And what else? X5 Raiders are still going up. People are still working through their 50 locks that they placed earlier. X6 Instigators. X6 Instigators are, I think, the most popular fighter on Independent Worlds. And they kind of are a decent balance. They've got okay speed, okay stats, not too expensive. So those locks that everybody has placed are just rolling. And their price has been pushed up to absurd levels. There's no way I would ever place a lock at 50 Ultranium for X6s. But X7s are quite cheap now. They're back down to about base price. And so it's probably time to start building even more of them. That's why I placed that lock on my this other world. On Einstein. Because 24, yeah, I'll buy him at 24. So, that's the turn. I'll see y'all in turn 11. And we will be on the cusp, the very cusp, of the attack on Soy Boy. Now, I do have all these Scanomatics. And what I'm going to do real quick, I'm going to turn them into auto fleets as well. I'm just going to send them bouncing around my empire. So on Khandra, you can go down to Forsworn. On Bethira, you actually already have an auto there. So we're going to modify you into an auto fleet, but we're going to let you sit here for one turn before we deploy you anywhere. The goal of all of this is just to make it unpredictable which of my planets have scanners at what time, in order to make it hard for people to plan how to effectively snipe me, effectively, like, and feint me out. So we've got Abrawari and Piranus. Right, Piranus has the superior shadow, so Piranus also, we're going to turn that into an auto fleet but not deploy it yet. And Abrawari will turn you into an auto fleet and not deploy, well, we will deploy you yet, actually. We'll deploy you to, who doesn't have a scanner? Bia has a scanner in the base fleet, Eisenhut doesn't, so Abrawari will just deploy you down to Eisenhut, and then to make it more complicated, actually we'll deploy this scanner. We'll wait one turn, because that scanner's going to relay. And then that scanner is going down to Eisenhut. So what we want is we want a scanner to hit Abrawari this turn, so it always has one. Well, I've got a spare here. So we'll make you an auto fleet. Yeah, my timing's just very slightly off. Okay, cancel your deployment. Don't deploy you to Forsworn. Deploy you to Abrawari, and the next turn we'll deploy you to Forsworn to start everything bouncing in the right orientation. So, okay, that's the turn. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you on turn 11. All right, folks, turn 11. We actually bumped at Mira, so this was that little fleet that I had just misaimed and then written off. You have to do that sometimes, especially when you're playing a slow faction. And Paladin actually decided to hit Mira at the same time. Now, this ended up being really good for him because when 3 players or more, you can have as many players as you want on the same battlefield, all fight like this, they all shoot at each other. There are no allies here. So effectively what happened was, this fleet is actually very close in firepower to this fleet. And in terms of hit generation, this fleet is pretty good, because X10s are pretty decent at hit generation. He'd be getting 4 hits a round out of the X7s. The Sentinels of Garsaso would be getting a couple hits a round, so that's 6. And then the TK tank would be getting a hit most rounds. So you'd be averaging between 6 and 7 hits per round. If 6 or 7 hits per round were distributed to the drooling eye over here, they'd probably be doing fairly significant damage. But effectively, when it came to these units targeting, my 9 X5 Raiders were serving as extra chaff for this fleet, because there's exactly the same chance of these units choosing to shoot at my fleet as there is of them choosing to shoot at this fleet. So as we went on, the battle lasted a long time, but because Paladin had relatively few units, and those units he had were tough, because Boron Recon Buggies are tough, and so are XMCs, with a very little luck, he actually took very, very few casualties. So all told, he took this world, which otherwise he might have lost all of his Recon Buggies and possibly even just lost the battle outright trying to take, and he only lost 4 firepower. So good on him. He's taken Mira. However, it's not going to matter all that much, because we are rolling in. So we've got over 200 firepower hitting Soy Boy. He has 133 firepower defending it. He could theoretically pull in another 15 there, 12 there, or 11 there. He can't pull these guys. Actually, they're just within range to reach, so he could also pull these guys in, another 6 there. So he could pull in another 30 firepower, and then whatever he can build, which should, if he's smart, be probably just Hue 9 Eliminators, just as many Hue 9s as he can possibly afford. He's got 1,000 population, so he can actually churn out 50 of those suckers. And 50 Hue 9s would give him... yeah, actually, if he churns out a full order of 50 Hue 9s right now, he would actually probably be slightly above me in firepower if he also pulls everything else back to defend. So he might be able to pull that off. But in the process, he's going to take some hits. We're deploying this fleet to flinch, hitting in 2 turns. It's 63 from Mira, so actually what we're going to do is we're just going to deploy this fleet to Mira, and then we can hop it down to flinch. So we're hitting Mira this turn. We're hitting Soy Boy with 200 firepower. Mira is 83 from Soy Boy. Actually, you know what? Because we've got fleets incoming to Soy Boy 2 turns away. Yeah, but we're going to send that in the second wave against Soy Boy. This fleet is heading to Mira because it would take 3 turns to hit Soy Boy. So we're going to Mira there. This fleet is hitting Soy Boy in 2 turns, etc., etc., etc. So we've got the first wave here, 200 firepower, which I think will take it. If it doesn't, we've got a second wave of about 80 firepower landing the turn after, which should hopefully clear off whatever remains of the defenses. If they don't, then I fucked up. I mean, you know, it happens sometimes. Like I said, I don't think he can stop me. I think my fleet is going to do better. I mean, his Zeron heavy cruisers are a lot like GPAs in terms of how they fight. He's got 2 of those. He's got 1 XMC, which is a lot less hit heavy. It does a lot less damage. And in terms of what I've got going in, I've got pretty heavy hits there, and then both of these fleets have 2 GPAs as their cores. So relatively little chaff in this fleet, but a pretty significant amount of chaff in this fleet. About 90 units of just pure chaff, and then also the Boron Recon buggies, which are very heavy chaff, and some X7s. And then, of course, I've got these 34 fighters coming in as well. So I think I'll take it. We will, of course, see. It will probably be a pretty close battle. He should, since Paladin is clearly making moves, at least occasionally, he should definitely see those fleets incoming, because some of them are very, very close to him. Both of these fleets should be visible. That one won't be visible yet, because it's just taking off now. This turn on Arion, I will build 2 CR Orgs, which will start to form the cores of my fleets going forward. Over here on Piranhas, I've got another side hauler moving out. I'll build 2 more next turn, still working on that lock I've got. Up here on Cabnos, still churning out more TK tanks, which is great. Kandra is deploying another A203 carrying some Ultranium to Arion. We've built up another pretty big grip of Ultranium, so we should be able to keep building those CR Orgs with no problem for a little while, and we may in fact be able to buy another set of licenses pretty soon. We're taking everything pretty much off of Relay. Yeah, our carrying capacity is exhausted, leaving exactly 2 Ultranium. And Mimer is still finishing out their lock of Boron Recon buggies. I could cancel that, actually. And one thing that I might do here would be to cancel that lock and grab Megabots instead, because Mimer is now high enough population that it can build Megabots, and it has over 2,000 Ultranium. So I could grab the Megabot licenses real quick right now and start putting them out. I kind of like to finish the Boron Recon buggy lock first, though. I'm up to producing 11, so I'll be able to get through it in just about 2 or 3 more turns, which should be fine. So that is basically the turn. In terms of what's going on elsewhere in the world, Star Charger is actually completely off the top 10 list. He's only got 10 worlds, and that's because Travail attacked him last turn. Paladin hit him this turn. That subtracted a world from his count. He captured Fairclough from nobody, but in the process he lost a lot because Fairclough had an HC4 space runway. And HC4 space runways have this special ability that all the X-line fighters have plus 15 defense and an extra attack anytime they're at the same world as a friendly space runway. So, the X6 Instigator, for example, has defense 25 and 1 attack. Well, if it's near a space runway, it has 40 defense and 2 attacks. 2 attacks meaning, and the total effect of that is to roughly double or slightly more its effective firepower. So really, these X6s are showing, this world is showing as having 59 firepower, but in actuality, it's like 16, 1.2, so like, yeah, because it would be 1.6 from each of these, approximately. So it's actually like 16, and then these guys are like, another 15 or so, 14 or so. So in actuality, it's more like 80 firepower, something like that. On top of that, of course, the HC4 space runway is actually very tough on its own. It doesn't inflict a lot of hits because its offense score is relatively low, but it still gets about 10 hits a round or so, and it takes 50 hits to kill it on average. So it inflicted a lot of damage to Star Charger's fleet. I mean, he got a little unlucky and had actually 2 of his TK Bikes V2 killed in 1 round. And then he just lost a lot of firepower. I mean, he won the fight, but he lost about over 60 firepower doing it. So casualties pretty heavy. So his firepower is a little bit depressed in that he's down to 281. So on the downside of the midpoint of this mega game. His population is fairly low because he's lost a couple of worlds, and his net worth has been depressed by that as well. Plus his worlds owned, of course, is not super high. That's my profile. That was the wrong button. I, meanwhile, am still second in worlds, tied for second in worlds, second in population. I'm fourth in firepower. I have 478 firepower right now. But yeah, I think as soon as I take Soy Boy, I'll be way up there in the rankings. And then once I take Soy Boy, of course, I'll be able to clear out these 3 worlds very quickly. We've talked about that. And then Gahun. Looks like Gahun is not really producing a whole lot. They may have stopped auto-building. I think what's happened here is these worlds were given auto-building orders, locks, manually when it looked like Paladin was staling out. But now that he's started making moves again, that's been turned off. Their orders have run out. So I don't think Gahun will auto-build again. So I should be able to clear it out, and Jabrea is still worthwhile as well, but Gahun is the real prize because it has 1800 Ultranium on it. So definitely, I'm hoping that the attack on Soy Boy goes really well. In any case, this is kind of brief compared to the others, but that is the turn. That's turn 11. That's all I'm doing this turn, and I'll see you all in turn 12.